I'd like to start this video with a really quick shout out to my friend Ray. He's a really cool dude and he's a hardcore gamer, and he loves Final Fantasy games, and my wife and I used to play Final Fantasy XIV with him. The reason I'm giving him a shout out is because recently he gave me a PSP. I've always wanted a PSP, especially recently, and he was just like, here you go. Here's a PSP. With like 15 games. And they're all really good. Sorry it took me so long to give you this well-deserved shout out, but I wanted to save it for something special. And this is a special day because today, I'm talking about Japanese RPGs. Japanese RPGs, or JRPGs for short, are some of my favorite games of all time.
Look at the shirt, it's really cool, it's from Final Fantasy VII.
Since I was fairly young and I played my first JRPG on the PS1, I've always been drawn to them. They invoke so much emotion. It's like binge watching a show from beginning to end. You grow so attached to the characters that once it's over, you almost miss them as though they're your own friends that you've said goodbye to. There was a brief period of time where I really didn't play JRPGs for a few years, probably because for a while I only had an Xbox 360 and JRPGs were pretty scarce on that system. But I'm back in full swing, and to celebrate my love for JRPGs, I thought I'd talk about my top 5 favorites of all time. And to keep things interesting, I'm going to limit it to one game per franchise, and I have to have beaten the game. The reason I chose this video to give a shout out to my friend Ray is because the first game on the list is actually a game from that system. Although I played it on my Vita last year. And that game is Lunar, Silver Star Harmony. Originally released as Lunar the Silver Star on Sega CD, and then Lunar Silver Star Story Complete on the PS1, Silver Star Harmony is the second remake of this classic game. Released on the PSP in 2010 with updated graphics, new voice acting, and a new isometric camera as opposed to the more familiar top-down camera from the previous games. The story revolves around Alex. He's a 15-year-old boy who dreams of becoming an adventurer like his hero, the legendary Dragon Master Dyne. The game is fairly standard as far as JRPGs and battle systems go, but there are a few things about it that stood out. The characters are all great, from Alex's flying cat thing, Null,
Are you deaf or something? I've been calling around for you everywhere.
to Nash, the arrogant but ultimately lovable mage, who in this game is voiced by Sam Riegel, also known for his role as Teddy in Persona 4.
Hey there, peasants! That's what I want to know. Who are you guys?
A few other things of note: battles aren't random, there's no annoying overworld map to get lost in, and NPCs are all interesting to talk to. Seriously, most NPCs in JRPGs are known for having one throwaway line of dialogue. NPCs in Lunar actually have multiple things to say to you if you keep talking to them, most of which are either interesting or funny in some way. If I could put this game any higher on my list, I totally would, but the games above it totally deserve their spot. I really want to play Lunar 2, but unfortunately it didn't get the PSP remake love that the original did. Hopefully someday Lunar 2 can get some kind of remake or re-release, but until then I think I'm just gonna have to wait, because I'm kinda cheap and that crap's expensive, yo. Number 4 is a game that a lot of people probably have on their top JRPG list, and I might get some crap for having it so low. It's another classic that I played later on in life, but man is it good. And that game is Chrono Trigger. I don't have a physical copy. Yeah, so I didn't play the Super Nintendo version of this game. I downloaded it from PSN and played it on my PS3 a few years ago. I know that a lot of the hardcore fans consider this to be the inferior version because of load times or whatever, but I don't really care. Plus, I'm just a sucker for anime cutscenes. If you're a JRPG fan, chances are you already know about Chrono Trigger, so I won't go too deep into it. I really love the game. The ahead-of-its-time combat, the character designs from Akira Toriyama, creator of the Dragon Ball franchise, the crazy twisting plot with multiple endings depending on your decisions throughout the game. It's freaking sweet! Going into this game, I had no idea what it was about. I just knew that people loved it and I wanted to play it. Despite the name of the game being Chrono Trigger, I totally didn't expect the time traveling aspect. The way it plays into the story is insane, and I will always love it. If this was 10 years ago, I feel like a lot more people might agree with my number 3. But these days I just feel like this game doesn't get as much love as it used to back then. In fact, I admit back then, this game probably would have been my number 1. And that game is Kingdom Hearts. I remember wanting Kingdom Hearts. So bad. I don't know what it was. I love Disney, and I love Final Fantasy, and maybe that's the weird magical combination that put a love in my heart for this game that I still have to this day. Of course, nowadays the Kingdom Hearts franchise isn't as beloved as it once was, mainly because of the weird, confusing, convoluted plotline told out of order over the course of, 9 games and multiple remakes and releases. It also may have to do with the fact that Kingdom Hearts 3 is taking a little too long to come out already. I've only ever finished Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, and recently I started playing Birth by Sleep, which I'm really enjoying, but I'd still have to say that my favorite is the original. While Kingdom Hearts 2 looks graphically cleaner, has better combat, and is improved in several ways, it just doesn't carry the weight for me that the original game does. Plus, I've always really liked Cloud's more interesting and original design in Kingdom Hearts 1. In Kingdom Hearts 2, he kinda looks just more Advent Children-ish. Don't even get me started on the music. To this day, I can't help but feel a twinge of joy every time I hear the music from Kingdom Hearts, and I still find myself listening to songs like Dearly Beloved and Simple and Clean. In fact, my friends have a band called Gates of Ivory, whose music I've used in a video before. They have covers of some Kingdom Hearts music on their YouTube channel, and their cover of Simple and Clean is one of my favorite versions of the song. In fact, the video for that song recently reached over 1 million views. I remember wanting a PS2 for a while before I got one, but that want was multiplied tenfold when Kingdom Hearts was released. I lived with my mom at the time, and I remember she didn't have a whole lot of money, but for Christmas one year she gathered what money she could, and she gave it to my dad and asked him to pick it up for her so she could give it to me. I think that, combined with the emotional resonance of the game, just gives me a lasting fondness that I'll always have. And I really cannot wait for Kingdom Hearts 3. Just give it to us already, it's been 12 years! Final Fantasy VII. This game is considered by many to be revolutionary. It was the first 3D Final Fantasy game, the first Final Fantasy game on the PS1, and was the game to send the JRPG genre skyrocketing into mainstream popularity. You could even argue that the phenomenon this game caused may very well be the reason the PS1 became the platform for so many great and classic JRPGs, like Xenogears and Legend of Dragoon. Yes, I have the green label copy. Final Fantasy VII is actually the first RPG I ever played. It's because of this game that I later on got into games like Morrowind, Knights of the Old Republic, and then eventually Fallout 3 and The Witcher. In fact, it's because of this game that I got into all these other JRPGs that I've played ever since then. But Final Fantasy VII is not my favorite Final Fantasy game. If not for my one game per franchise rule, Final Fantasy VII would probably be my number 3. But instead, what is my favorite Final Fantasy game? It's Final Fantasy XIII! No, it's not Final Fantasy XIII, are you kidding me? Couldn't even bring myself to finish that one. It's Final Fantasy IX, fools! I feel like this is the Final Fantasy game that you just don't hear much about. I constantly hear about 6, 7, 8, people talk a lot about 13, but that's more to complain. I loved 15, and it was my favorite game of last year. But 9 holds a special place in my heart. It doesn't hold the personal impact of Final Fantasy VII, but to me it's just better. While I probably am more fond of the music in Final Fantasy VII, nothing quite pushes my nostalgia button like Final Fantasy IX's title screen music. Visually, Final Fantasy IX really shines, even to this day in my opinion. Let's face it, 7's character models aren't all that great. Granted, for a time they were nice, and they do have their own charm to them. I've always thought they kinda look like a 3D interpretation of classic 16-bit JRPG sprites, what with the lack of facial features and hands. And I'm pretty sure that's what Square was probably going for. But just look at the stylistic art style of 9. Every mainline Final Fantasy game since then has gone for a more realistic approach to character design. Which is nice and all, but after a while you just want to see something a bit more alive and creative and not just some pretty boy covered in belts and zippers. I think the main draw for me here really is the characters. From the wisecracking, puckish rogue of a main character Zidane, to the lovably annoying, overbearing, but honorable Steiner. And Vivi! Look at Vivi. Look at him. I could gush about Final Fantasy IX all day, but I want to keep things going here, and I really haven't completed the game in about 15 years, so now we come to the big one. My personal favorite #1 JRPG of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here it is. It's this one. Go. You're diddly dang right, it's Persona 4 Golden. I love so much about this game. The combat is solid as far as turn-based combat can go, the cast is amazing, the story is gripping, and the music. My goodness, the music. Persona 4 Golden's soundtrack is among my favorite in all of video gaming. So much so that I've played a ton of the spin-off game Persona 4 Dancing All Night and loved every bit of it, when I really never even play rhythm games. My favorite part of this game, and any of the 3 Persona games I've played, is the social aspect. I love going out and exploring the town, meeting up with the in-game friends, building up their social links to learn more about their personal side stories, then ultimately helping them become a better person and being rewarded with in-game benefits. Now, I know Persona 5 just came out not too long ago, and yes, I did buy that sucker on day 1 and beat it over the course of the following month, and I loved it to bits. The decision to pick just one of these 2 games was really close. In fact, if I had to give it a visual representation, it was really close, bro. Persona 5 is definitely improved over Persona 4 in a lot of ways. The visuals, the stylistic design of everything from the combat screen to the menus and shops, the dungeons are visually much more impressive and just more interesting to navigate through altogether. I'd even go as far as to say I do like the story in Persona 5 a bit more. I want to avoid spoilers, so I'm not really gonna go into it, but believe me, the story pulls no punches. So why give it to Persona 4? Well, I guess it really isn't about what Persona 4 does better, it's more about what Persona 5 doesn't do so good. Which isn't much, but for me, it was enough. Persona 4 Golden is not a short game. I beat it in probably around 60 hours or so, maybe closer to 70. But gosh dang, Persona 5 is a lot longer. It took me around 110 hours to finish. As much as I loved it, it got to the point where I just wanted to see the ending and move on with my life. As welcome as Persona 5 is, it still managed to overstay its welcome just a bit in my opinion. The nail in Persona 5's glorious black and red coffin is, in fact, something I do prefer about Persona 4. The characters. You may have noticed that for most of the games I've talked about today, one thing I've consistently mentioned as a plus were the characters.
I hate to say it, but I guess we'll have to wait another night and see what happens.
Since we cannot identify the person at this time, we have no choice but to wait and see what happens.
That's exactly what we just said.
Shut up!
Good JRPGs need to have a strong and likable cast to support them. I personally just developed more of a fondness for Persona 4's characters in my time with that game, and Persona 5, in my opinion, just had a couple weak links in that department. I didn't really get to know Haru because she comes so late in the game that by the time I met her, I was already trying to max out all my social links for everybody I was already working on the whole time. And I'm probably gonna get some hate for this, but I really didn't like Yusuke. I mean, Persona 4 has kanji, so I think that says everything.
I said to stop running from me! Huh? What the hell?
So there you have it, my top 5 JRPGs of all time, at least for now. That opinion could change because I have so many JRPGs that I've yet to finish, or haven't even started. I recently beat Suikoden 2, and currently I'm playing Dragon Quest VIII, and kinda going back and forth between this and Xenogears. So, With all that, who knows, maybe someday I can remake this list and have a completely different top 5. So I'd really like to hear your opinion. What are your favorite JRPGs of all time? Did you agree with any of mine? Did you disagree with my list and want to beat the crap out of me? Because that's how the internet works these days when someone has a different opinion. I really do want to know, and maybe I'll reply and kind of discuss with you and talk about video games because it's a lot of fun. And who knows, maybe we can start a conversation and even a friendship. It's got weird.